Hey YouTube, Alex here, and in today's video I want to talk about a potential delay of plans. It's not set in stone, it might not even happen. I might go ahead and proceed with the current plan, but I thought I'd mention it just because it would mean a change in direction for my channel, and I'd have to change the name at least temporarily, but ultimately my end goal is still the same. I do want to live abroad, and I'm just trying to think about the most practical way to do that when it comes to finances. I could, at this point, live in Thailand for a number of years without having to worry about my day-to-day bills, but I also do not want to get to that point and not have made solid advances when it comes to my programming career. Because I'm equally concerned about having a successful programming career as I am living in other countries, and frankly, I would sacrifice a lot from my career just because having no family means I have to take my career more seriously, I think, than perhaps most people do. So what could cause a delay in this? Well, I recently have thought about moving back to the Bay Area and trying to get a computer-related job, and I have some friends that work there. I also know some people up in Seattle that could get me an interview. I just want some more work experience. I feel like I'm still a little bit green when it comes to working in IT, and I think that having some work experience would really help solidify some of my goals. So some of you might be wondering, well, Bay Area, Silicon Valley, isn't that a lot more expensive than Thailand? And certainly it is, but also there's a much greater income potential there. You can really make a lot of career advancement and make significantly more money than you can in most of the US. I'd say perhaps the only comparable city to the Bay Area for tech would be like New York City, maybe Austin to a lesser extent. I would be willing to delay Thailand to get a job in the Bay Area, and I'll get into a little bit about why, because I think that there's some nuance there and some explanation needed. So with the Bay Area, typically you get paid more than anywhere else in the country, especially in technology, like I said, except for a couple of exceptions. And for me, getting a foot in my door in that area, that would really strengthen my resume. I mean, it could mean, for example, living in Japan for a while, working and living in Japan, perhaps getting a remote job. And that's what I really want to get into in this video, is discussing the fact that I think that if I did have Bay Area Tech on my resume, that it would make it much more it would be much more straightforward to get a remote position, and that's where my ideal situation really comes about, is living in Thailand, working for an American company, earning in US dollars, but not having to pay for a high cost of living, because I'm interested in saving a majority of my salary if I can get a big salary, because I'm a single guy. I can live pretty simply. Even if I'm dating in Thailand, that's not super expensive. It's not going to be, because I'm not interested in spending money simply to sustain a relationship. I understand relationships have costs, but I'm not going to have a relationship at unreasonable expense to myself. I've got to really be concerned about my savings rate, my ability to build up savings, investments, these kinds of things. And so that's really a big incentive and advantage of living in Thailand, is that idea I can live really well on a few $1,000s a month, similar to how I'd live if I spent my entire paycheck in much of the US. The next thing is, my buddy offered me a really reasonable place as far as rent is concerned in San Jose. So the next factor is, I'm halfway through my degree with few math classes left. I understand a lot of the mathematics now behind programming. I still need to master Calculus 2 and some advanced stats courses, but I'm getting closer to being able to self-teaching. So as far as risk goes, I think I've lowered my risk somewhat. As far as being in an expensive place, I'm not starting totally from scratch. I've now had several years of training, and I've made a lot of progress in that time as far as my knowledge goes. So I think it would make more sense to be there now than 3 years ago when I moved back to Tennessee, a lower cost of living area. Well, 2.5 years ago, less than 2.5 years ago. Anyway, I miss the Bay Area. The other thing that I forgot to mention that would be really helpful about getting one of those Bay Area jobs is I would spend part of my excess salary in hiring an editor for the channel. I think that would really bring up the quality of the videos. I like to do some editing, but frankly, it's just a really big time consumption thing when I also consider all my programming responsibilities. So anyway, thank you so much, and talk to you soon. So the next factor is I'm halfway through my degree with few math classes left. I understand a lot of the mathematics now behind programming. I still need to master Calculus 2 and some advanced stats courses, but I'm getting closer to being able to self-teaching. So as far as risk goes, I think I've lowered my risk somewhat. As far as being in an expensive place, I'm not starting totally from scratch. I've now had several years of training, and I've made a lot of progress in that time as far as my knowledge goes. So I think it would make more sense to be there now than 3 years ago when I moved back to Tennessee, a lower cost of living area. Well, 2.5 years ago, less than 2.5 years ago. Anyway, I miss the Bay Area.